So again, good morning and thank you for joining us. We are having our session today on 6 smart strategies to keep your top talent from becoming someone else's. This webinar is the kickoff of a 6-part series on workforce-related topics supported by Gordon Food Service. GFS is a great partner of WRA's with valuable business solutions for you to consider. This webinar is hosted by the Wisconsin Restaurant Association, dedicated to the success of the food service and hospitality industry. WRA serves as your primary resource for regulatory guidance, training opportunities, and solutions to relevant challenges. A couple of housekeeping items and we'll get rolling here. We are broadcasting via Facebook Live this morning. Feel free to submit questions using the chat box, and we strongly encourage you, and Lisa's going to be coaching us on, to use the chat box feature today for interactive session. And this webinar will be recorded and sent to you in the next day or two. And if you would please answer the quick feedback questions at the end of the session, we would sure appreciate it. I will now introduce Lisa Ryan, who is with us today. Lisa Ryan is the Chief Appreciation Strategist of Grategy out of Cleveland, Ohio. Lisa has experience speaking to a variety of industries on the topics of recruiting, positive workplace culture, intergenerational communication, employee acquisition, employee engagement, retention, and gratitude strategies for personal and professional development. I'm sure you can all see why I'm excited to have Lisa with us today. So Lisa, go ahead and get us started.
All righty. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Facebook Live, people watching this live, people in the recording, wherever you're tuning in from, I am glad you're here today. So kind of to get, especially if you're on live, this is the only way that it works, but I want to go and see, I want to go and see exactly where it is you are coming in from. I know chances are good that you're probably from the state of Wisconsin, but what part of the state are you in? Or if you're tuning in from somewhere else, go ahead and put that in the chat. As you can see my smiling face, and I'll share a little bit about my background, but I am born and raised Cleveland, Ohio. So I see we have Madison in the house, we have Eau Claire in the house, we have Appleton. So welcome everybody, it's good to be here. And I do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to see how chatty you guys are going to be when we're going through this together. So we have outside of Wisconsin with Michigan being in the house. So Argyle, Wisconsin, where if you didn't know, that's 45 miles southwest of Madison. We have Nina. So good. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to have some fun today because this past year, this has been kind of a trip, hasn't it? I mean, we have added so much new language to our lexicon. Thankfully, we're finally getting over all this social distancing and stay at home and stay in place orders and all of that. But I think that the one thing that we will never get away from, no matter what, in the world of Zoom is, of course, you're on mute, Bob. I do this professionally, and I still, because we think that we're being all polite and everything, so we mute ourselves, and then we go to talk, and, it doesn't matter your level of Zoom expertise. That's something that I think we're always going to have to deal with, but it really has changed excuse me, the way that we do business. And that's an important thing to consider because a year and a half ago, we wouldn't even thought about going to conferences and doing meetings and having these webinar series all on Zoom because we were used to getting together in person. And this past year has really opened up a lot of not only technology for us, but has given us some opportunities that maybe we didn't have before. But along with that has come this full range of emotions. Now, throughout the last year and a half, you've probably experienced a lot of these. Maybe at the beginning, especially, there was a lot of anger, and maybe there still is on days, because you know what, that we shouldn't be talking about this a year and a half later, for goodness sake. This should have been done a long time ago. Thankfully, I know in Ohio here, the mask mandate is finally lifted, and they finally opened up nursing homes so I can go and spend quality time with my dad. But there was that level of anger there. There are people that there's a lot of fear around it, especially at the beginning. I was thinking about this yesterday. Remember all the days of, leaving your mail outside in your garage for 2 weeks and spraying down your groceries and doing everything. But there's still that fear because maybe at the beginning, you didn't know anybody that had COVID, and now we're having more and more strains coming out. So there's that fear around it. For some people, it's been neutral the whole time. They are like, you know what? I am an introvert, and if I never have to hug another stranger in my life, it will be great. This social distancing has been one of the highlights of my life. There's some people that are hopeful, and we're seeing a lot more hope there because of the vaccines that are going up, because of the medications, because we're not hearing about the deaths from COVID all day long. So we're starting to have that hope that is coming. For some people, you're happy. You're like, you know what? This has completely changed my business. We didn't have a robust delivery service before. We didn't have a robust pickup service before. Now we have completely changed our business model. For people like me in speaking, I was used to making my living on stages at conferences or working directly with people doing training or coaching. And so this has opened up. I now have a podcast. I've done a summit. I've done tons of meetings and conferences online. So it's given a nice opportunity to explore different ways of doing business. And of course, perhaps you're just happy there's beer. So go ahead and in the chat, exactly where you're at right now. And this is something that we go day to day, hour to hour sometimes, but 1 being angry, 2 being fearful, 3 being neutral, 4 being hopeful, 5 happy, and 6, my people, happy there's beer. So go ahead. Okay, I see Chuck is hopeful. So again, we're starting to see that because there's this sense of normalcy coming back, which feels so good. I know the first time when they started lifting the mask mandates here and the stores started saying masks optional, we went into our local grocery store and there's still a lot of people wearing masks, and my husband and I felt like rebels. It's like a week ago through. Happy there's wine. You know what? And I know that. I just couldn't find an emoji with wine, so we had to settle with beer. So wine is good too. So we have 5 and 6 from Dan. And the reason why this is important for us to consider is just because we're at a particular level with our emotions, the people that you're working with, the people who are working for you on a day-to-day basis, we go through all of these different things because we don't necessarily know what our employees are going through. We don't necessarily know what our customers are going through. Scott and I Scott's my husband. We went out to dinner on Friday night and it was so cute. We saw this family coming out of a restaurant. We were sitting outside and this family came out of a restaurant with obviously aged parents. They were probably celebrating their, 90th birthday or something. Okay. But it was the first time that I had seen elderly people coming out of any restaurant and not wearing a mask. There's a sense of joy there that we can start to see people again. And, it's nice that trend is continuing. So what we're missing though is really that basic human connection. And just so you know, yes, I did go to your Facebook page and borrow some of the clip art that I'm using today. So if you see yourself in one of my pictures, go ahead and put that in the chat of, hey, there's me. But it is that connection. I know for me with my dad, at his assisted living facility, they went on lockdown last year, March 15th. And it was just within the last couple weeks. So last Saturday was the first time that I took him out. We had him out over yesterday for Father's Day. So there's this nice sense of normalcy and connection that's starting to come back again. So a little bit about my background. Again, I am born and raised Cleveland, Ohio. My very first job was waitressing at a restaurant in the mall. And then after, of course, I was 14, I lied about my age. When we used to be able to do that and work waitressing, I worked fast food. I had 6 different jobs at the mall. But then as an adult, I started my career as an executive recruiter. I'm actually one of the few people on the planet who can actually say they sold their mother. Now, I placed my mother in a position I have to tell you she absolutely hated. But I told her, Mother, you have got to stay there at least 90 days because I have a guarantee and I can't afford to give back the commission I made on you. So thankfully, Mother was there for 2.5 years. She didn't disown me. From there, I went into industrial sales, selling things like electrical cord and cable into the maintenance department, as well as welding products. And yes, I do weld. And then I spent the last part of my career in healthcare. But what happened to change everything and really have this focus on gratitude strategies? That's the name of my company, is Grategy, to create that workplace of appreciation, that culture of appreciation and gratitude. Well, it actually started with a fire walk. So if you have ever done a fire walk, and no, this is not like, somebody spilled the barbecue in the backyard and you happen to walk on it and get burned. This is a 12-foot bed, a walk across a 12-foot bed of red hot burning embers. Yes, it does look like that. Go ahead and put that in the chat that you are a fire walker, is in the house. Every once in a while, we do run into that. But the sad part is about that fire walk in 2009 is it wasn't my first one. I did my first one in 1989 when I was 6, just in case you're doing the math. The first one was powerful because really, when you walk on fire, you're like, I can do anything. But the second one was life-changing because as my friends and I were driving home from Chicago, we were pretty jacked up. You might actually say we were fired up. I know, bump. I can see your groans, right? I can hear your groans right now. Anyway, as we're driving back from Chicago, we knew that unless we took action, all of that excitement, we'd go right back to where we were before, and we didn't want that to happen again. So we opened up a Facebook thread, and every day we shared with each other, people we met, things we learned, experiences that we had. And one of my friends said, well, why don't we write down 3 things that we're grateful for? Okay, did that every day, held each other accountable. And it was that practice that literally changed everything. I mean, I was in medical sales at the time, and customers I hadn't talked to for months were calling me, hey, can you come in and sell me some stuff? I'll be right there. There were 2 large hospital facilities I'd been calling on for almost 5 years that seemed to close effortlessly. I noticed the difference from my husband, who was becoming more verbally appreciative. And believe me, it wasn't because I was keeping the kitchen any cleaner. All of these things were happening, but the only thing that I had changed was this practice of gratitude. So that's where the research began. And I've read thousands of white papers and books and attended programs to see, is gratitude more than this feel-good emotion that we normally ascribe to it? And I found out that there was. One of the first studies I read was by Dr. Robert Emmons. He's a PhD professor at the University of California, Davis. And he took a random group of students, divided them into 3. The first group, he had them write down the things they were grateful for. The second group, all the troubles, hassles, things that bugged them. And the third group simply recorded the day's events. They were the control group. Well, after 10 weeks, the gratitude group was 25% happier. Excuse me. You might be saying, Lisa, how do you know they were actually 25% happier? Well, when Dr. Emmons presented his findings, he did so in a pie chart. And you know that pie makes everybody happy. No, for about 10 weeks before the survey, he had them write down their stress levels, relationships, headaches, backaches, all of that, because he wanted to be able to separate the chronically happy people from, let's just call them the chronically crabby people. And they saw that 25% increase. The gratitude group complained less often. Wouldn't that be nice? The gratitude group had fewer physical ailments. So if we look at, in this case, autoimmune diseases, neuromuscular diseases, people with a regular practice of gratitude fare better. But if we look at COVID and this last year of really focusing on our health, focusing on our immune system, taking care of ourselves, gratitude is a great practice to get into because it really helps us to develop that habit of looking for the good. The gratitude group exercised on average an hour and a half more per week than the other two groups. So again, we look at those healthy emotions, the choosing better, healthier lifestyles. The gratitude group was more happy. They were more joyful. They were more fun to be around. They were just a lot, they saw the difference. And then the interesting thing is that Dr. Emmons interviewed the people associated with the gratitude group to see if they noticed any difference, and they did. They found that the gratitude group was more emotionally available. They were nicer to be around. So when it comes to creating that workplace culture, chances are good that in the last 10 years or so, you have seen a lot about employee engagement. The turnover in the restaurant industry is really high compared to a lot of other industries, but you don't know how to keep people. And you keep hearing about this employee engagement thing, and everybody's coming up with all of these different ideas to engage employees and connect with them. And for some people, it kind of becomes this to-do list. Okay, I got to figure out some kind of ways to engage my employees. You go to a conference, you attend a webinar, you do something, and you get all of these ideas. And what do? You go back to your store and you start to implement them. And then it basically becomes another flavor of the week. I mean, you come back and you are all jacked up and excited about all these great ideas you have for employee engagement. And you know what your employees are saying? They're like, oh no, she just came back from another conference. Let's just ignore everything that they say for like the next 2 weeks until things get back to normal. So in our time together, we're going to look at 6 different strategies that you can adapt to your workplace. But we start with that gratitude and just kind of that reminder, because these are things that you can start with you. The nice thing about gratitude is it not only works in the workplace, you know what it does is it helps you have a better relationship with your spouse, with your kids, with everybody else who's in your life. And then that makes it easier to take it to the workforce. So the first thing is that what we want approachable leadership, just like you have with the WRA. But think about your restaurant, think about your store, your facility. Do you know your employees by name? Do you know a little bit about them? Can they come to you when things are going wrong? Or do you make it unsafe for them to do so? I remember way back in the day, I was working for a distributor, a fastener distributor here in Cleveland called Premier Industries. It was started by a gentleman named Mort Mandel out of the trunk of his car in the 1940s. And we had our picnic, it was hot dogs and potato salad in the parking lot, basically. And Mr. Mandel was there. And I was a 23-year-old little starstruck fangirl. I was like, oh my God, it's Mr. Mandel. So I went up to him and I introduced myself to him and I let him know, how I loved working for his company, how I admired what he had put together over the last, 30, 40 years, whatever it was. And we had a really nice conversation. He was very nice. By the time I got back to my office, the office was a Twitter. And this was way before Twitter, because they're saying, you talked to Mort. Why did you talk to Mort? What did you say to him? What did he say to you? Because what should have happened is I should have talked to my boss, who talked to her boss, who talked to his boss, who just talked to their boss and said, is it okay if Lisa talks to Mort? But that wasn't the case. And back in the day, leadership was like that. It was very autocratic. Right now, with the employees that you have, they have access. They want access to you. Even if they have never worked in a restaurant their entire life, and this is their first experience, they're seeing the world differently. And if they're trying to give you ideas, maybe it's not something that you can do. Maybe it's not something that you can incorporate, but there's a little seed of that idea that you can. And your employees feel that they're being listened to. They feel that they're being valued. And frankly, your employees know their job better than you know their job. So when they're seeing things, but what we're doing is we're creating that culture, and approachable leadership is part of it. Now, there's going to be some times that your employees are going to come and they're going to tell you some stuff. And I will tell you what, it is the mastery of the poker face. Your only response when employee shares with you something you don't want to hear is, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Again, maybe it's not something you can do anything about, but if your response to them has been, we've been doing it in this restaurant for the past 20 years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that COVID has really shown us in the last year how important it is to constantly look at our business, to constantly look for new ways, and asking your employees, going up and having one-on-one conversations with them, coffee with the boss, finding out what's going on. Because when you start to build these connections, that's when little by little you're going to see that turnover rate decrease. So approachable leadership, number one. And when you're doing that, these are some of the conversations as a manager to ask. When you're talking to your employees, how's it going for you? Now, a lot of times we just kind of say, hey, how's it going? But how's it going for you really? If they're struggling because of family members or kids or financial problems or whatever it is, they can't have their full focus on you and your business. So we look for ways to connect with them. Are you getting the support you need? Sometimes in management, and that ties right into the next one of what I can do to support you better. Sometimes managers or owners feel that that's a scary question to ask, because they think that employees are going to say, you know what, I want $10 an hour raise and weekends off, or something crazy like that, knowing that they work in the restaurant industry. That's not going to happen. But if you genuinely ask and authentically want to know, and thank you for sharing, and let's see what we can do, and then giving credit where that credit is due. You know what? It's because of Joe that we're implementing this new idea. Thank you, Joe. I was working with a golf course a couple of years ago, and they actually were rewarding employees for every idea, $5 for every idea that they came out with. And they didn't care what the idea was. For example, one of the ideas was that they should use the overripe bananas in banana split so people couldn't see, that they were actually brown. Got $5 for the idea. But that single policy of just giving $5 for employees to get to share ideas made that golf course tens of thousands of dollars. Because again, they didn't take themselves too seriously. They had some fun with it. But we start to develop those personal connections with employees and finding out what we in leadership can do to support them better. Next, giving employees the opportunity to grow. And this just isn't from a work standpoint that you're going to teach them, send them to customer service school so that they do better, or a chef school, something that's going to tie directly in with their job. we start to look for ways to connect and invest in our employees from a holistic standpoint. Because there's a small percentage of employees and people for that actually take advantage of training. You're in that small percentage because you're here. Again, whether you're turning in on live or Facebook Live or watching the recording, this is something that you're doing. As a matter of fact, speaking a couple of years ago at an HR conference, and I put the question out there. I said, how do you invest in your employees? And a woman raised her hand and she said that they give every employee $1,500 per year to invest in however they want. It could be personal development, it could be professional development, they could take a public speaking class, they could take an underwater basket weaving class. It didn't matter, they just did that. And the funny thing is, when that woman was talking about this $1,500, you could almost see the heads of the accounting managers exploding as they're saying, we have 100 employees. We don't have that kind of money laying around. So I asked her, I said, what percentage of your employees actually take advantage of that? So I want to hear from you in the chat. Think about what percentage you're giving your employees $1,500 a year. They can invest in whatever personal or professional development they want. What percentage do you think took advantage of that? So go ahead and put that in the chat. I want to see what you're thinking. Oh, right off the bat, David, we have my cynical people. Okay, we have Aaron coming in at 20%. Any other guesses out there? Because that's what you're thinking. I will tell you, when I ask this question, it's kind of funny, the responses that I get, because I'll have people going, 100%, there you go. I love my optimist. Thank you, William, for being so optimistic. Chuck, a little bit kind of in there, but the actual number, here we go, 3 to 5%. So, there you go, David, you were right in there taking advantage of that. And you know who those people are? Those people are your future leaders, because we are all busy. We have our plates more than full right now, surrounded by technology. Even if you have tuition reimbursement, there's a good chance that, again, 97% of your employees aren't going to take advantage of that, even if they know they can better themselves. For me, I was actually on the 14-year program when it came to getting my MBA. I worked all day and then I went to school at night, 6 to 8 and 8 to 10 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Why Tuesdays and Thursdays? Well, because Dynasty was on Wednesdays and I certainly had my priorities. But when you see people, so you look at the amount that you're investing in your employees, and it's teeny tiny compared to the savings that you have. If you can just reduce your turnover by 5%, by 10%. So as I'm going through this, and sharing with you some of the different opportunities to grow, if there's something that you're doing at your restaurant, at your facility right now, go ahead and put that in the chat, because one of the values that we get from attending these kind of webinars is the fact that you can take advantage of that wisdom in the room. So maybe you're doing, well, lunch and learns would be difficult because lunch is probably your busy time there, but we find ways to connect with employees and have them watching the same video, taking the same thing so that they can learn together and having that same conversation. There are so many videos out there. I'm sure the WRA has a lot of resources for you, but you can go on YouTube and find just about anything. I actually became an artist a couple months ago. I started with paint by numbers and I graduated to painting. But if I want to take a painting lesson, I go on YouTube and I can take a 3-hour painting lesson. Doing ongoing training in-house. Employee-led training. That's a great way of getting your employees involved. And there's a lot of times, like maybe you have a book club, or, there's a particular book that you've just read recently. Like for me, I just happen to have this here because I'm reading it again. My favorite book. Oh, it's backwards. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you came and said, and gave this book to one of your employees and said, here, read this and tell me what you think, the chance of them actually cracking that book is like slim and none. But if you say, in this chapter, there are some ideas that we can use here. Now you're giving your employee exactly what they need, and you're instructing them. And again, giving them that respect of being able to train other employees. There's things like going to public seminars, particularly for your new supervisor. I don't have to tell you that, if you watch an episode or two of Undercover Boss, you know what new supervisors can be like. If you've never seen Undercover Boss, it's where the CEO of a big chain goes undercover. Basically, they put on a wig, dye their teeth brown. No idea why they do that. And then they go undercover to see. And new supervisors, you just took your best weight person and turned them into your worst supervisor without training. So sending them to public seminars where they have the opportunity to connect with other new supervisors, to get their skills, and also to trade shows. We're getting into, or maybe we're past it, but food show season. How many times do you go to those? How many times do you encourage or invite employees to go so they can see what's going on in the market? They can see the competition, the conversation. But we look for all different ways to invest. Let's see. And again, there's all kinds of webinars through WRA. So take advantage of your membership, but to share that with your employees, giving them the time that they need, paying them, giving them the couple hours to watch a webinar. And if they do that, giving them the homework of what are the best ideas, where are the areas that you think that we can put into practice. So again, if there are other things that you are doing to invest in your people, I gave you a few ideas, but maybe there's other things that you're doing to help that out besides just on-the-job skills training. Can go ahead and put that in the chat and really start to learn from each other. But definitely reach out to WRA and the archive that they have there of these webinars for you. Next, we want to be transparent. Now, this is not the time as leaders and managers and owners to be all that in a bag of chips. I have it all together, because for the last year and a half, a lot of us did not. And so being transparent about the changes in your restaurant, where you need help. I know that everybody right now is scrambling to find people. Perhaps like the state of Ohio, I'm not sure if Wisconsin did it, but the state of Ohio is actually getting rid of the bump in the $300 extra a week in unemployment benefits because people are having such a hard time finding help. And so it's that level of communication, that transparency. Are your employees going to like what you have to say all the time? Absolutely not. But at least if you're coming from a place of vulnerability, of transparency, going back to those questions that we talked about a little bit earlier, do you have the support you need? How can I support you? And sharing different life hacks that you have, seeing what you can do to be more flexible in your scheduling, to work with employees, but to let them know the good times and the bad times. Because of a lot of employees, they're seeing the prices on your menu and they're like, this restaurant is making money hand over fist. They also don't understand that your margins are like this thin. So it's in that level of vulnerability. Okay, yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah, so you guys must be going all the way till September. Good news and bad news. There are people that do really need that extra bump, but there's also, I know when you're driving around the streets of Cleveland, I'm sure Wisconsin is the same. Every single place that you walk by has a help wanted sign. So there's really not so it's looking for ways to be the place where people want to work. Your employees love working there. They tell their friends about it. You're posting on social media. You're doing things together. Because if I, as an employee or a potential employee, are thinking about coming to work at your restaurant, I'm going to go check you out on Facebook. I'm going to go check you out on social media, on YouTube. I'm going to say, is this a place I want to work? I'm going to go to Glassdoor.com to see what other employees are saying about working there. So this is a really good technique of sitting down with your employees. It's called the 3x3 technique. And these are these one-on-ones. Maybe you have a thing where it's a coffee with the boss, where you just pick an employee or pick a couple employees, making sure that you're going through all of your employees, but asking them, what are 3 things that you like about working here? And you know what those things are? That becomes fodder for your recruiting, because you're hearing it from the mouths of your employees, what they like about working for you, and you can focus on giving them more of that. The second and a little bit harder question is, what are 3 things that they don't like, or 3 things that they would change? Again, you may or may not have the power to change that, but the fact that you're listening and you're doing something to process that, to use that as a seed for maybe the changes that you want to make at your facility. Be tactical. There's a lot of things that went on this year. Again, when we were all at stay-at-home orders and we still needed to eat, the takeout business, the delivery business, the DoorDashes and Uber Eats, and I'm not even going to go there because they were just really causing some problems in the restaurant industry because of the fees that they're charging you guys. But we have to take a look at what was working then. What were you not doing a year and a half ago that now you're doing? All of a sudden, I can't tell you how many happy hours I went to. There's a local restaurant here that they were doing bartending demonstrations. So they would have a local bartender. We all got on Zoom. We were sent out the ingredients. Actually, for one local restaurant, they actually sent the liquor too. So all the ingredients, including the glassware. And for a couple hours, we were there and learning how to make a couple different cocktails. They put together packages to go along with it, something that had never happened before, that they were able to start incorporating that. So we look for things that maybe we started during COVID, but we are now continuing. So again, if there's something that you started doing, and again, maybe it's something unique, maybe it's a new way of doing business, you're doing classes online, you're selling packages that people can make from home, there's something unique that you did. But if there is something that you started doing within the last year because of COVID that you're continuing to use, go ahead and put that in the chat, because again, we want to learn from each other. I do have a gift for you. This is my latest book. It's called To Have and to Hold, 101 Smart Strategies to Engage Employees. And so all you're going to do is you're going to text the word engage, and that is without the quotes, to 66866. What will happen is you will get a text back from me asking you for your first name and email address. The reason why I ask for your first name is because if your name is john.smith@ABC Company, it's easy for me to say, hey, John. But if your email address is hotbikerdude@Yahoo, I don't really want to go there. So what this book has is 101 different ideas to engage with your employees. If you are international, I know that we didn't look like we had anybody, but then you'll just send me an email. I found out the hard way that the join by text does not work internationally. I happened to find that when I was working in Canada, and I used that. But This is actually, and the reason it's called To Have and to Hold is because the chapters are actually in the wedding vows, from this day forward in sickness and health, for richer or poorer. And then the 7th chapter is Till Death Do Us Part, question mark. And the entire chapter is nothing but, probably not, but if you follow the ideas in this book, you will keep the honeymoon going. Oh yeah, it is just full of really bad puns. So doesn't matter if you're married, single, whatever, it's still a fun book with 101 ideas that can help. So what I'll do is I will be sending you if you opt into that, I will send you the link so you can download the book and you can share it with whoever you want. All right. So moving on, we want to acknowledge excellence. If you come from the idea that employees are doing the very best they can with the situation that they've been given, I know that from just from a standpoint of not being able to have the number of workers, actually I was reading, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal today, that they were talking about how we're in this weird economic area right now where people have less personal debt, they have more savings, they're spending more money, the economy is booming, but restaurants are fully booked, but they don't have the staff to keep it up. So it's just in this weird area right now. So when your employees are doing things well, it's important to acknowledge that. And to be specific, if you're saying, oh, that Lisa Ryan woman told me I need to thank 5 people today, all right, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Was that 5? It's like, no, you catch them in the act of doing things well, and you specifically recognize them for that. And there's all kinds of ideas in the To Have and to Hold book as far as how you can recognize employees. But some of the different ways, if you Post-it notes, when you tell somebody you appreciate them, you create this beautiful memory. But when you write it down, you create a treasure. Giving your employees that personal note, that personal connection, even better, sending it to them at home so their loved ones could see. Maybe you had a really big party that went really late, but your employees just killed it. They were awesome. Of sending thank you note to them at their house, and even thanking their spouses or significant others at home. I just want to let you know how much we appreciate your mom or dad or whoever, putting in the extra time that we needed for this. My favorite book along the lines is The 5 Love Languages. And it's really connecting with people in the way that they want to be acknowledged. In the workplace, it's the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace, but people get their love tanks filled in one of 5 ways: words of affirmation, physical touch, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. At the beginning of a relationship, we're all about that because we're functioning on all 5. But as the relationship deepens, we're more likely to go to where we like to be acknowledged, but not necessarily the other person. So it's a really great book. And maybe it's at some point today, you'll think about who needs to hear from me today, and just send that person a text. Hey, I was thinking about you. I want to let you know how much I love you. I appreciate you, whatever it is, of reaching out to one person to connect with them. I know I did this at one of my programs. I had everybody take out their cell phone and, think about who needed to hear from them and send them that mushy text and see what the responses were. Well, one woman came up to me afterwards. She's like, oh, I sent it to my husband and here's his response. And he's like, oh, I so needed to hear from you today. Thank you so much. I miss you. I love you. It was like this beautiful, touching text. And then a guy came up to me and he showed me, and his text he sent to his cousin, and his cousin's like, are you at one of those conferences where they're making you do exercises? So sometimes the apology approach works, which basically you tell the person, listen, I have not been letting you know how much I appreciate you. I'm going to make more of an effort to do that. So again, if you want to, in the chat, talk about some of the ways that you are acknowledging or recognizing your team members. Do you have employee of the month? Do you have server of the month? Do you have, are you giving out prizes or keeping track or whatever it is? Are you saying thank you? Are you welcoming everybody at the start of the shift, just simply saying hello, calling them by name, whatever it is? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And finally, we want to really use this time wisely. Use it to connect. Think about our business. Think about us as people. Think about our relationships. Because frankly, we've had people that were so focused on work for their entire lives. And then for the last year and a half, they've been at home having those relationships with family, playing with their grandkids, whatever. And they're looking at work differently. I know for me, one of the biggest gifts of COVID has been our weekly family Zooms, actually twice a week. I started that last March. And I told my mom, I'm like, let's do family Zoom. And my mom's like, I am not doing that technology. And I could have said, okay, well, we can do FaceTime like we normally did. And I said, no, we're doing Zoom. So the first one, it was me, my mom, and my stepsister. And then the second week, one of my sisters joined. And then the third week, my other sister joined. So since then, we've been doing this now twice a week for the last year, since last March. So whatever that was. Wednesday nights are family, Saturday afternoons are international family Zoom. So you can see we've had people from all over the world, Trinidad, where my mother was born, Barbados, England, Canada. So the whole time zone, even from England being 5 hours ahead and California being 3 hours behind. But I've gotten closer to my family in the last year than ever before. To me, it's the biggest gift of COVID. So if you have a similar experience as far as, one of your gifts of COVID and you want to share that, give somebody a shout out or put it in the chat, that would be awesome too. But really using that time. So think about it now. And at this point, I would really like to hear from you. What are, as a result of our time together, what is it that you're committing to do? Is there something that maybe you can be a little bit more approachable in your leadership, setting up coffee dates with your employees, finding out what it is that they want and how you can support them? Is it going to be a new way of investing in your employees? Do you need to be a little bit more transparent with them? What are some of the things that you can be tactical, going forward, using that we did from COVID? Acknowledging excellence. Is there something else that you can do there? Expressing your appreciation. And then the bonus there was using the time to connect. So I see with David, they're doing a sign-in for employees that show up for shifts and then holding a drawing every week for $100 gas card. And you know what? And that's great because we all need gas. Most people who have cars, $100 gas card would be nice. One of the ideas, and it's in the book, it's called the All About Me sheet. And this is where you find out from your employees what their favorite candy bar is, what their favorite restaurant is. Hopefully it's yours, but besides yours, what their other favorite restaurant is. But being able to tailor that, what's your favorite $100 gift card, your favorite $20 gift card, your favorite $5 gift card? Because if you go and you just get a bunch of coffee cards and start handing them out to people, it may be that person doesn't drink coffee, like who in the restaurant business doesn't. But so you're looking to really tailor that. So William says the 3x3s and investing. And these are the things that we are looking for. You want to make those connections so that you can, and it's just these baby steps. If you choose one of those, please don't choose all 7. Choose the one that's going to help you the most. Maybe it's the area where you need the most help, but make that commitment for the long term, knowing that this is something that come hell or high water, whether the employees go for it right off the bat in the first 2 weeks or not, I'm committing to do this going forward. Another thing that I'd love to do is to connect with you on LinkedIn. I have lots of resources on LinkedIn. I post a video almost daily with employee engagement tips. So all you'll do for that is you will take out your phone, open up the LinkedIn app. There's 4 squares in the top right corner. You'll point the camera at the screen, and that will give us the opportunity to connect. You can, if you want to put a note with it, hey, saw you on WRA, that helps me a little bit as far as knowing where that connection request came from. But LinkedIn is certainly a great thing. So we just have a couple minutes left. If there is any question or questions that you have, go ahead and put that in the chat now, because I want to share with you really one of my very favorite stories about, I have 2 of my favorite waiters of all time, Darren and Enrique. But I want to share with Darren because I used to have a networking group back in 2010. And I decided to form this networking group, and we had our very first meeting, and there was 80 people that came to this. And they all, of course, wanted separate checks. So Darren never lost his beat. He smiled. He was so engaging. He was wonderful. Got everybody their checks, got them out in time. The networking group was successful for about 3 years after that. My husband, Scott, and I went to dinner at this restaurant, and Darren was our waiter. And again, he was so good and friendly and took such great care of us that on the way out of the restaurant, I asked the maitre d' for the general manager's card. And, they kind of look at you like, what do you want it for? But I sent a letter to the general manager, just expressing the fact of what a great experience that we had and what a fantastic worker Darren was, and how they should be proud to have somebody of his caliber working for him. Well, the next month when I had my networking group, there was a letter waiting for me. And this was the poem that Darren wrote to me. Positive thinking is a life raft to the soul when you feel like your ship is sinking. A positive outlook each day invites God's special blessings to come your way. Lisa, I can say with all positivity, your act of kindness to my heart has forever inspired me. My way of thanking you will be to pass on that beautiful positive vibe in all you say and do. It's amazing how one person's sunshine can incredibly change another's life. And it makes me proud to say you're a friend of mine. God bless you, Darren. It's amazing how one person's sunshine can incredibly change another's life. People are getting back out again. They're starting to come back to restaurants without fear, without masks, so that we can experience that basic human connection. And it's your restaurant, it's your employees that can give that people, that can be that other person's sunshine and change the lives, or at least the day and the experience, to keep those customers coming back and those employees for staying with you. So think for yourself, whose life are you going to impact today? My name's Lisa Ryan, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and go get them.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I sure appreciate it. We're going to say goodbye to our Facebook Live friends. And now we're back to just the group. And if you have any questions, please, we'll hang on for a moment here. I know it's almost top of the hour, but if you have questions for Lisa, now is your chance. So we'll give you a moment.
Yeah, and also, take a screenshot of this screen, because there's my email address. If something hits you later on in the day that you want to send me an email, please feel free to do that too. I know we're down to our last official 2 minutes together, but I am always here for you. And again, we have the opportunity to connect on LinkedIn. And if you took advantage of the the Engage book, which again, all you're doing is and I'll put that, text the word, you're texting the word engage, oops, spell it correct, to 66866. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I will go ahead then and include both your email and the text code there too in the confirmation email for all of our registrants today.
Perfect.
And thank you again, Gordon Food Service, for your support in this series. And we've also launched a newsletter with Gordon Food Service on the topic of workforce solutions. So if you aren't already getting that newsletter, please let me know. And I will include a link as well to the newsletter so you can get registered for that if you aren't already. So, all right, we'll let everybody get on with their, we have one question. Let's just try to answer that quick. What's your #1 cultural change measure you would institute today if you were running a restaurant?
I would either do the 3x3. I would set up one-on-one meetings with every single person on your staff and ask those 3 questions. What are the 3 things that you like about working here? What are the 3 things that you would change if you were me? Because I can give you some idea, but if it's not right for your staff, they're not going to have the buy-in. So it's finding out what works for them, listening to their ideas, and then taking one of those ideas and starting to implement it. Your culture did not develop overnight, and it's not going to change overnight. So patience, persistence, and really that true caring and acknowledgement of your team, that's what's going to make the change.
Thank you. And I'm glad we were able to get that one in here. All right, everybody, will have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Lisa. Take care.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.